King Richard from 2021, directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green, starring Will Smith, Angelina Ellis Taylor, John Bernthal. Quick logline on the movie: a look at how tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams become who they are after the coaching from their father, Richard. So, this movie, I put this as a wild card. I even towered with the idea of putting this as a masterpiece from a pure performance standpoint. But, as a movie, though, it's sort of your typical movie, like even though it's movie, it just happens to be movie about some of the two greatest athletes that have ever lived. But in terms of a movie of this nature, which is sort of a sports movie, a family drama, it hits all the beats. There's nothing unexpected per se about the movie. But I think Will, like I've been saying throughout, where he's always himself, even when he's playing a famous person like Muhammad Ali. There's something about King Richard, his makeup, his walk, those tight shorts, that he does for the first time disappear for me. And that's why it's a wild card, because this is the first time I really felt that he was vulnerable enough to go there. And also, yes, this character is out there, confident. I mean, the things he's doing for his daughter is just really out there.
Oh yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
with a lot of guts and charisma and what have you can do that. And Will has those qualities. But I think what's really explored in the movie is the complicatedness of all this and the dark side of how far will you push your kids to go to where you want to go?
Right.
What is being sacrificed? All his scenes with his wife, who played by Angelina Ellis Taylor, who's amazing in the movie, well-deserved Oscar nomination. Like their marriage, that relationship with his wife, like that's really suffers throughout the movie because this person is just so dogged at what he wants to get, which again, you could argue there are similarities with Will, but at the same time, there is a sweetness to this person. Despite the anger and the rage and the confidence, this is the closest I came to finding a Will Smith performance that was quiet, as quiet as Will Smith can be, I think. And that's why it's a wild card. I think this movie really works, actually. And in a weird way, given what Oscars are, they reward transformations. I think it's a deserved win for Will Smith that he has an Oscar. Of course, it's totally tainted, will always be, given what happened. And it's also kind of weirdly fitting that this movie that deals with the complicated, darker side of this character ends up being the movie and the win that unleashes Will's own complicated mess in the world. So it's just a strange phenomenon that this movie is and everything around it. But yeah, had you watched this movie before when it came out?
Yeah, so I had seen this movie before because of the Oscar nominations. I was like, okay, I'll take a look at this, whatever. Like, I kind of feel like I want to complete sort of look at all the best pictures. And I remember at the time being very pleasantly surprised with how good of a movie this was. And then on this rewatch, it even went up in my mind of just what a great movie this really is. And a lot of it is Will, for sure. And what I agree with everything you said in terms of like he's got this accent, he's got this walk, his a bit of a makeup on his face, and he just does not at all feel like the Will Smith movie persona. This is almost, I feel like, the stripping away of that entirely. And this really is like a lot of treatises on who he is as a person, like what his life attitude is. I think is very similar to what Richard is trying to instill in his kids and in his own life, and how he wants to live his life and what he's escaping. He keeps, mentioning a lot of like, okay, yeah, like we left the ghetto. I can say that, but no one can. If you say that around my kids, like I'll get upset. And like there is sort of that bottled up, I don't want to say like violence because King Richard isn't violent, but he definitely is like short tempered. Sometimes if you push him on he seems like a cool, like jovial guy who's like really intense, but if you push him in the wrong way, like, that intensity and that energy can go out in a negative way. And there's several scenes in the movie that kind of show that. And I think that is Will. And there's a line in the movie about like nothing comes to a sleeper except dreams. Like you got to go out and you got to do stuff. You got to be pushing. You got to be pushing. It's like grind mindset, which I think is definitely part of what Will is as a person and how he's dealt with his own career and his own life, and it also working with his kids too. Like he's
Mhm.
trying to get his kids, his daughter in the music business, his son as an actor, and I wonder how much of his own sort of like being a stage parent to his kids is similar to what Richard was doing with the sisters. And obviously, like Will Smith was successful and Richard wasn't as successful, so he's trying to funnel that through his children. But I wonder if there's that sort of sense of fatherhood and how Will Smith views being a dad is like pushing your kids to be successful versions of themselves, which is essentially what Richard is doing too. And there's good and bad parts of that. It's like I don't
Mhm.
really know. Like they didn't want to be tennis stars, but they were made into tennis stars.
Mhm.
He chose tennis because it's like, okay, there's not a lot of African American women in this sport. We'll be unique. We're just gonna choose that. It
Yeah.
wasn't about like, oh, daddy, I really want to play tennis. Okay. It's like they had a whole plan worked out already where he just like plugs them in, which definitely can be very negative.
Mhm.
As again, a stage parent has a lot of negative connotations, but I don't know. I come across in this movie being like, no, I get it. Like he's a good father, actually. He's always trying to pull them back and be like, hey, look, you're just kids. You gotta be humble. Don't brag. Don't talk about your success. You're not going to practice that. You're going to Disneyland because I want to make sure that they're still children. So there's like this double-edged sword to Richard in this movie, which I think maybe could be how Will acts with his kids too. I don't know, but I found, especially on the second rewatch, not only the movie go up in my mind and Will Smith's performance, but I think this is like the best distillation of him as a man and his work philosophy and his life philosophy that I've seen. And no wonder he was drawn to this project and trying to get the movie off the ground because I think it's a personal statement for him. Is sort of
Mhm.
how I read it. It's a great film.
Yeah, my thing on this is that this is the first time where that side is fully on display in
Agreed.
the movie,
Yeah.
which that's why it feels like a wild card. Like something must have cracked inside of him to let us go there with
Hmm.
him. And then outside of that, I think the cast, like I said, Taylor is amazing. The kids are great. The tennis
Yeah.
stuff is great. Like the whole movie hangs together really well. Like it's not just a star vehicle that, oh, one performance is great and the rest of the movie is sort of like, B at best. Like
Right.
the whole thing, as predictable as it is in a movie like this, is actually really well done.
Agreed. Yeah. And the movie works and he's just a
Yeah.
key component of it, but it's not, again, like not a star vehicle in that sense, which is
Yeah.
what I think makes this movie unique. Normally, when these actors, if this
Yeah.
was in Will Smith's head of like, okay, I want to get the Oscar. Like he seems to be of the last 20 years trying to do all these performances that he's trying to like grab the Oscar. But this movie doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like just a great movie and he has great performance. So it doesn't feel very Oscar baity, even though obviously it is. But I don't know, the movie as a whole works so well around that it feels more just like a complete work, that it's just a great film about perseverance, about sports, about both the sisters too. In the third act, they really kind of become,
Hmm.
co-leads along with Will. And I think that the fact the movie gives them the room for that too is really effective as a third act instead of it still being just all about Will's character and Will's point of view. They bring in these other folks, like the wife you mentioned has
Hmm.
some incredible scenes of them back and forth. They really start to better understand Richard as a person
Hmm.
through what the wife is saying and through the performances of the other actors. So I think this, unfortunately, this movie, like you said, will forever be tainted by the reaction that he had at the Oscars. And his win, unfortunately, will be tainted too, because I think this is very well deserved. Like if it
Hmm.
wasn't for the slap, I'd be like, great, this is the crowning achievement on Will Smith's career. He finally
Yeah.
did it. He found the right vehicle, the right movie, and the right performance, and it's amazing. And he deserves, the Oscar for sure, just as being such a major force in the in the culture of the last 30 years. But you can't really fully say that because of what happened.
Nope, you can't.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.